Let's go around the world and let's get to Eddie Yeranian. Eddie is our man in the Middle East based in Cairo. Eddie, great to have you, man.
Thank you, John, as always. We're watching this with interest. Everybody is asking me about President Trump, so obviously it's something that interests everyone.
What is the world's reaction? Let's start with the Middle East. You're right there in Egypt. What is kind of the media saying about it?
They've been putting on a positive face. I think the Egyptian government has good relations with President Trump, with his administration, so they're wishing him well. And most of the coverage in the media, the TV networks and the press, the newspapers, has been positive. The Arab news channels, it's been a bit mixed, but the Saudi news channels and the other Gulf stations, other than Qatar's news stations, have been putting out fairly positive news about President Trump.
It appears that he's going to get discharged from the hospital either today or tomorrow, so he's improving rapidly. Any vitriol coming out of the news media? Like, of course, here in the States, we have the typical Hollywood people and others on the left saying that they hope he dies and, he deserves to die from COVID and things of that nature. Just nasty stuff that is vile. Are you getting any of that on the world scene?
It's been a bit tempered. I mean, not positive noises, but certainly sour noises coming out of Syria. Although even their TV network, I watched to see what they were saying. It was not a long story, but it wasn't as negative as I might have thought. Iran didn't put it at the top of its newscast, fairly bottom of the page-ish, but it wasn't as negative as I might have expected either. The BBC Arabic service has the most noisy anti-Trump coverage of most of the Arab news channels, and that's run by Britain. And Britain, I think most of the British media don't like President Trump, and they make no secret about it. So that's one of the sour noises. Qatar is not very fond of President Trump, but even they were kind of towing the line, not saying anything too terribly nasty. But some of their commentators were not wishing him well.
Seems like, Eddie, he's doing fine, and he's a warrior, as you know. He's fought this back like he's fought back everything. So it appears he's going to be okay, and it appears he's going to be getting out the next day or so. And we all wish him the best. A lot of enthusiasm for the president. Big vigil outside of the hospital for 2 days. People coming from all over the United States in order to be there by the hospital, waving his flags and things of that nature. We had the same thing at Trump Tower yesterday in New York City. So just a lot of outpouring of love and support for the president like I've never seen. Probably have to go back to John Kennedy to get the fervent, backers. Now, obviously, he's got people that don't like him, right? We know that. And the country is split, but those that do are certainly enthusiastic about him. Haven't seen that a lot in the world. Now, Eddie, let's get to some of the issues going on in the Middle East. This peace plan that Jared Kushner put together, which involves the UAE normalizing relations publicly with Israel, Bahrain as well. What does the future hold for that?
Well, John, I see a lot of movement, albeit slow in some places, in some cases. The Sudanese interim president was talking about normalizing with Israel, but the prime minister has been kind of reluctant and said that it requires everyone to be on board and needs to be discussed. So I guess that's stalled there. Lebanon, you would think Lebanon would not be moving, but they're offering to negotiate with Israel over their offshore gas reserves, which is something they were vowing not to do only just recently, albeit with the United Nations. But that's sort of a movement in the direction of normalizing with Israel. And we've been hearing noises about other Gulf states normalizing, like Oman. That hasn't quite happened yet. So I think there is a lot of movement, but I guess it's slow, and we're waiting for just the next move.
And when you say the next move, with we still haven't really resolved the Israeli-Palestinian issue, right? Because in the proposal that Kushner had, that's dead in the water because it's not a two-state solution. So although these are good moves in the right direction, basically until that is somehow resolved, you're never going to get peace there, right? And there was this grand plan that Trump had, but now that's kind of fallen by the wayside, right?
I'm not really sure it's fallen by the wayside because this is all incremental. Even he said so when they first announced the proposals, and it's moving in that direction. You need to resolve some of these outer issues before you get to the inner issues, which are more difficult to solve. And you really need to get the Palestinians on board negotiating, and they're probably not going to do it so long as they think that someone is going to block it completely. And now their safety valves in terms of blockage are disappearing and evaporating. So I guess ultimately they're going to find out they're going to have to sit down and start negotiating themselves.
And without their direct involvement, Eddie, and direct negotiation, really you can't move forward. Is that just reality, right?
Yes, clearly, but the nuisance value of having all these countries block a deal, once you get that nuisance value out of there, you get to the core of the problem, and you can put more pressure on to get people negotiating and talking. Whereas with everything up in the air, you don't even know where to start.
Progress has been made, certainly. It's interesting to get your perspective that you're saying that a lot of the Middle Eastern leaders there and also the media has been respectful of the president and wishing him well, right? I mean, that would be the general consensus since he's been in the hospital.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I was a bit surprised. I was pleased, but a bit surprised. And even, as I said, Iran has not been very negative about the president, and you might expect it to be.
What did you expect to happen? You said you were surprised by the, let's call it, at best wishes, at worst, tepid response to the president. Why were you shocked by that?
Well, I mean, generally, the media in the rest of the world, other parts of the world, has been very negative about the president, and it all comes from sort of an alliance of various groups and media and countries. And the Middle East is bit more fractured than that. So, I mean, the fact that they're not all on the same page and not all singing the same negative tune that some of the American media channels are singing, it shows that they're thinking. They're thinking for themselves, not piping a company line, and they're really not as negative on the president as the American media, some of the American media.
Eddie Yeranian, as always, I want to thank you for your great insight and that. Thank you for the update, Ed. You're the man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, John.
All right. John Fredericks Radio Network.